Alright, so now we're standing in the shade, but there's not much. And it's probably prudent that we're standing up here because this next solution that we have would probably be installed somewhere up here, or even maybe in the back, and that is geothermal heating. Now, many of you have suggested that I look at LDS Prepper, as well as some of the other YouTube folks, but mostly LDS Prepper, because he installed what's called a earth tube system underneath his greenhouse, and he did a really quite phenomenal job of that. And I did reach out to him. I haven't heard back. I also reached out to one of the people who designs earth tubes for a living, and I haven't heard back from them either. I contacted them a few times, and I don't think I'm important enough to hit their radar quite yet. So we're going to have to change that. They probably think I'm completely nuts, which is probably not too far away from the truth, but I'm pretty serious about all this, right? So let's talk about geothermal and earth tubes. I did some of the calculations, and what we would need, if my calculations are right, which was based off some of what these other folks have done, we would need 4 to 6 inch, so that's that big, pipe, and that pipe can get expensive, depending on what type you use, and we need 5 of those that would run 250 feet out and back, so 500 foot lengths total. And those would run up into the building, probably up through the where the double barrel wood stove is at right now. We'd remove the wood stove, and we'd actually run the pipes up into there. And we need 5 of them. So that would be 10 total pipes coming into the building. You'd have an end, an input and an output, and an input and an output, input, output, input, output, input, output, right? So 10 total, 5 tubes total. 10 total ends, 5 tubes total. Each one of those would run out 250 feet, and if you've seen the Help Wanted video, you know that's a long way away from this building. The slope of the land does change, so we would have to excavate. That's not that big a deal, right? But the trench would have to be somewhere between 10 to 12 feet deep here because of the frost line, and we'd have to make sure it's sloped correctly to have drainage. When I continue to look into the different piping that's available for earth tubes, you have the high density polyethylene, high density poly, HDPE I think it is, or HDPM, HDP something. Anyway, there's a nice breeze coming right here. I hope it's not too bad on the mic for you guys. By the way, I am looking into different equipment to get a better mic system, but the system I have right now, it doesn't like the professional mics, and I have one, but it won't work with it. So I am working on audio. Thank you for all the feedback, but just bear with me until I get the money for that and come up with a solution that works. Okay, so the high density poly is fairly expensive. It's kind of tough to work with, and you have to have special tools, or you have to pay someone to come and install it. And that's the most common type that people use for this earth tube thing. The cheaper solution is to go with corrugated pipe that's smooth on the inside. The cheapest solution is corrugated pipe that's smooth on the inside that's perforated, because then you actually get drainage in the pipe, but that's a double-edged sword. You see, if you don't drain an earth tube correctly, then within a few years you'll have a significant mold issue based on the research, and you'll end up having to cap the system, and it'll be useless. So you'll spend a lot of money putting in earth tubes, but if you don't set it up exactly perfectly, and my understanding is they're very finicky, if you don't get it just right, there's a high probability that it will fail in a few years. The second challenge, so if you went with corrugated perforated pipe with a sock on it, you get the drainage so you don't have the mold problem, but what you introduce is radon. That deep down in the ground, you have that good old-fashioned radon gas, which is Elbato, and we do not want to be pumping radon into here. So this is eventually going to be a certified commercial growing facility, and the inspector is going to come, he's going to put his air tester right there, and if there's radon in it, shut it down, get everybody out, bring in the guys in the big old suits, cap it, and that thing's done, right? So then I looked at different pipe. You have a solid, like PVC pipe essentially, or sewer pipe you can put in the ground, but the costs add up, and again, you have to have it perfectly set up with the drain and everything just right. So, my conclusion on earth tubes is very high potential for reward, because the air going into them and coming out of them, or the air coming out of them, is going to be close to 50 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. So you'll get cooling in the summer, which is really good. Actually, you can see the doors open behind me, and the reason for that is because we're cooling this building just with a breeze. There's a really nice breeze coming out to keep this building cool, as compared to a traditional greenhouse where you'd have to put coverings and everything over it. All we have to do is open the door, and it keeps it pretty cool. But if we did earth tubes, we get that 50 degree Fahrenheit cool air coming through there. We probably have to put some fans on it due to the length of run that we have. We have a lot of friction loss in that length of tube. You also have to consider when doing earth tubes failure due to compression of the dirt. When you have 10 feet of soil above you, depending on what type of pipe you use, like if you went with corrugated, that's a lot of pressure coming down. And there's a significant chance that if there's any blemishes in that pipe, it can go and compress your flow. And then that tube is basically done. So then you have to do a bunch of connections between them, and then that adds a whole bunch of complexity to it as well. So I think earth tubes are a great idea in theory, but in practicality, when you depend on it, for a business like this, it's just too risky. I think for a personal thing like what LDS Prepper did, actually the way he installed it is fantastic. Underneath the greenhouse itself, I think that's probably the way to go. And hindsight being 2020, maybe that's what we would have done if we would have known about that. But from where we're at right now, I'm taking earth tubes and I'm putting it on the shelf. The radon and the mold are just simply way too risky for a commercial facility, and we don't want to get anyone sick. We don't want to get us sick. That would be bad. So, the geothermal I'm talking about is a geothermal heat pump. Based on the calculations that we did on the insulation trade study, we're looking at 70,000 BTU per hour that we need. Now, the heat pumps are sold based in tons. So I think it's roughly 1 ton equals 12,000 BTU. So we need about, we need 2 3-ton systems or a 4-ton system. And that would give us the heating that we need. But we need, again, 2 of them. If one fails, we've got to have something else there to rock and roll. So let's talk about installation and running of a geothermal heat pump. First and foremost, the most efficient thing that you can possibly ever get right now today with our technology is a heat pump. The reason for that, a heat pump doesn't generate heat. What it does is it takes heat from over here and goes and moves it over here. It actually doesn't generate any heat at all. All it's doing is moving it. So for every watt of energy that you use, of power that you use, excuse me, you get multiple times that of heat being pushed over here, because all you're doing is using chemistry and physics, and you're moving heat from one place to the other. It's like a giant heat vacuum is what it is, right? It's just your refrigerator in reverse. So a refrigerator sucks heat out of the fridge, and then a heat pump sucks heat out of the air and moves it to another place, one way or the other. A heat pump in the summer sucks heat out of the building and pushes it outside. In the winter, it sucks heat out of somewhere and pushes it into the building. It is the most efficient way to move heat, to heat anything. So a geothermal heat pump has efficiency factors, which say for every watt of energy, of power that you use, you get this much energy in heating. So geothermal heat pumps are even more efficient than traditional heat pumps, and they have efficiency factors of 3.5 up to 5.1. What that means, 5.1. 5.1 means for every watt of energy I use, electricity, I get 5 watts of heat. That's awesome. So, that's a serious consideration. And we have enough electricity here to actually run these heat pumps, because we only need to run them for about 15 minutes every hour, and then they'll heat up the whole building. And basically that's actually true for all of these. You just have to run them for 15 minutes every hour, and you'll get the heat up, and then the heat will start coming down. The next hour you raise it back up again, and it comes down. Next hour you raise it back up, and it comes back down. So geothermal heat pump will cost us, if we're at -8 Fahrenheit, which is the coldest that we got to last year, it'll cost us $982 a month to heat this, compared to $2,800 a month to heat it with propane in the same conditions, or $3,500 a month to heat it with diesel. So the savings there are huge. Going from $1,000 for heating with electricity at our worst case, which doesn't happen all the time, that's our worst case scenario, up to $3,500 for diesel, with propane being right there in the middle at $2,800. That's $1,000 difference between electricity and propane. So let's talk about, so that's the cost to run it. Let's talk about the cost to install it. First, you'd have to pour a small 4-foot by 4-foot pad for each of them. So that's not hard. We can do that. That's easy. They'd be mounted outside. We'd have to make sure that we put them in a spot that we can get to with the snowblower so we can keep the snow off of them and keep them running. Now, that's not so that we can get air to it, but we got to make sure they're actually functioning and not covered in an ice cube and they actually burn out. Then we have to dig 250 feet of trench and put like the PEX tube that you see me put in underneath my fish tanks. We have to put that down in the ground in coils. So you're going to have to dig these trenches, go rent an excavator, and then you put all the tubing in, you run it up to your heat pumps, and then you're going to have to run ductwork into the building. Total cost, about $15,000. And that's if I do all the work myself, rent the excavator, and buy the equipment. It can go up higher than that depending on what type of heat pump you go with. So now you got to look at the bigger picture. Geothermal heat pump. Install. More complicated than propane, more complicated than diesel. Cost to run. The least expensive. That's significant because we're going to be stuck with it for a long time. Benefit, that's not as compared to the other ones. In the summer, a geothermal heat pump can be put in reverse and you can actually cool the building, which brings your temperatures down and creates a more even grow environment to potentially increase your production, thus making you more money. That's not to be overlooked. That's a big, big benefit. But installation cost, over $15,000 as compared to $6,000 for propane. So, I'm curious to know your thoughts. Where we're at right now is we've talked to the bank and we have a loan application. We're seriously considering what we should do here. The trade study that I just talked about, propane, diesel, and electric, shows that propane is the one that kind of wins as far as ease of installation, cost to run, and cost of installation. It's really quite awesome, actually. Propane's pretty good stuff. But geothermal keeps coming back up. It's really expensive to install, but it's cheaper to run in the long term. So if you're going to spend $6,000 for propane, you got another $9,000 plus to get to geothermal. But you get more benefit, and it's cheaper in the long run. Every month you're spending less money. Boy, but that means we'd have to get a loan, and we're not really excited about that. So I guess maybe we can open up on GoFundMe, and we can try to get the money from everybody out there, but that's crazy. Love to know your thoughts, though, because that's my only other option. So to me, where we're stuck is there's this like trifecta of things happening. One is we've got to get the insulation installed, and we know what we're going to do there. We're going to go after the CoverX, I think is the name of the company, specifically built for this type of building insulation. That's $9,000, but it'll pay for itself the first year, so that's a good investment. Okay. This next piece, though, the heating, I said it's a trifecta, is so expensive that we'd have to get a loan. And because it's so expensive, not only would we have to get a loan for it, because it would consume all the dollars that we have, but we still have to pay for the insulation in addition to that. We have to pay for the microgreen road. Remember, we got to put gravel down here so we can get out here every day once it starts snowing. So that's going to be over $1,000. And you add that all up, it's quite a bit of money. So the trifecta, the thing that brings it all into reality for us, makes it really sink down, is you really need to have a customer. You got to know that the money you're putting in this thing is going to be able to come back out to some level of confidence. There's no guarantees in life. There's certainly no guarantees here. if we don't insulate and heat, we can't grow in the winter, and there's a good chance that we could lose our customers come next year. And then, you know, we don't want to do that. We want to keep going. We want to be better than the competition. We want to get everything out there so we can keep this thing funded and try to get to HAB 2. we want to build what we're here to do: sustainable food and energy. Get that technology built, right? But here's the stepping stones that we got to work through. So in order to get that much customer demand, we have to look at distribution. Distribution is making us go down the path of certification and regulations, getting licenses and all that, which we're starting. There'll be some videos coming up where we go over that. We are working with the regulators now. We've sent them the information on this building, sent them a YouTube link so they can see what's happening. They're actually going to be visiting next Friday, this upcoming Friday, and we're excited. They're excited to see what we got. They like what we have. They think we're doing the right stuff. I'm certain that there's going to be some things they're going to tell us we need to change. We're ready for that. But we're really trying to do everything the right way. So I say that because in order to get, we got to look at regulations and licenses so that we can get more customers, so that we can reduce the risk that our investment is not going to pay itself off, so that we can make the decision to get the bank loan, so that we can actually fund the insulation, the heating, the microgreen road, and we also have the lighting that we have to deal with coming up as well to have winter operations. The good news in all of this is, based on our math, which we've done now, I think I'm up to sixth time, making sure that all the numbers still work out. The numbers work out. We can get the money we need to start building HAB 2 if we can get microgreen operation up and running to its full capacity, which is 18 trays per hour for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, 44 weeks a year. So this is all very doable. We're literally a few phone calls away from finding a distributor. We just have to find it. And then we have to find the regulations, which we've called the people now, and we're starting to get that information. And, I mean, we're really close. It seemed, when Mrs. Martian and I were sitting down talking about this, it's like, man, it seems so far away. But when you actually sit and look at it, we're literally a phone call away from getting a distributor. It's just calling distributors and asking them what they need, what they want, how they want to work. And once we find that one, what are their regulations, and then going through the process to become regulated. So, and I think based on talking to the Department of Agriculture, we're going to be able to do that. So, that's a lot I'm hitting you with. And I just, you know, maybe watch the video a few times, kind of soak it in, see what your thoughts are here. But we haven't made the decision yet. By the time you see this video, we will still not have made the decision. So you'll have the opportunity to impact our decision. Curious to know what your thoughts are. It's not an option to stop right now. I mean, I guess it is, but it's a really bad option. And the reason for that is, again, there's that, you know, you stop providing the customers, you present a doorway for other competition to show up, and then come spring, maybe they supplied over winter and you weren't there. It'd be very easy to lose those customers. And I'm a competitive guy. I don't really want to do that. You know, I want to stay where we're at. I don't want to lose the ground that we've made. And we've made really good ground this year. We're up to, what, 5 customers now? We've got the likes of Google, local Google data facility that's interested in buying our microgreens. That's phenomenal. And that was word of mouth. That's pretty cool. So we're really close. Okay, so I think that's it. I'm going to end there. So we went over the trade study. You got propane, which is the least expensive to install, but it's in the middle as far as price to run, and you don't get any cooling. You have diesel, which is the most expensive to run. It's a little more complicated than propane to install, and you don't get any cooling. And then you have the big granddaddy of them all, geothermal heat pumps. You need 2 3-ton or 2 4-ton systems. One is primary, one is backup. They're the most expensive to install by a lot, but they're the least expensive to run by a lot. So is it worth, and you get cooling in the summertime. So what are your thoughts? Curious to know. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for sticking along. If you made it this far, it's a lot of talking and not a lot of cool action, but I wanted to share it with y'all. If you did like it, be sure to give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and then you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. In the meantime, everybody, this is The Real Martian. It's time to go get in the pool.